Good afternoon, and welcome to day one of the 2018 Sloan Sports Analytics Conference. My name is Frank Rinaldi, and I'm a first-year MBA student at MIT Sloan, and it's my privilege to present the Ticketing Analytics panel. Our distinguished panelists from my left are Patrick Ryan, co-founder of Eventellect, Russell Schiabetti, president of Planning and Insights at Core, Kurt Schwarzkopf, SVP of NBA and NHL Arenas at Ticketmaster, Tim Zhu, CFO and EVP at the Boston Red Sox, and our moderator today will be Eric Chemi, sports reporter at CNBC. The panel will run for a total of 40 minutes with 5 minutes at the end for Q&A. If you have questions for the panelists, please submit them via Twitter utilizing the hashtag ticketing. The moderator will select the top questions towards the end of the panel. And with that, I'll hand it over to Eric. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Frank. My mic's okay, right? Everybody can hear me? That sounds good. I saw somebody was applauding earlier, so I think we already have a biased crowd, but hopefully by the end, shouldn't be too bad. I want to start with Pat, Eventellect, the big Dodgers deal. I don't know if people in the audience are aware of this. Huge numbers. You guys just signed up with the Dodgers as an exclusive partner, but you said there's a lot of fake news out there. So help the audience figure out what's real, what's fake, and is there enough money that Tim here is going to say, I want the Red Sox to do the same deal too?
Obviously, I think that every team has a different approach based on what's best for their market. Our goal as a company is to be as helpful to our partner teams as possible, and that can mean a lot of different things. And it currently means a lot of different structures. You know, for years, there was a lot of business where it was just brokers buying tickets, and the profit and the data resided with that broker. But now the new era is about, more collaboration, and there's different types of deals that shape and transform markets in lots of different ways. And so it's about, consulting with that team and finding the best solution for their market, both based on attendance and revenue, and also brand. I think that's one of the other big considerations is the joke about this event could have been dynamically priced really high once President Obama got announced, but the brand of the event maybe would have turned off future college students from seeing the event being so expensive. So when we engage with our partner teams, regardless of the structure, we want to be cognizant of their brand on the low end of games and on high end of games to make sure that everything flows very logically for the experience they want their fans to have.
Tim, I want to turn to you. People that I know that are Red Sox season ticket holders, they say, oh, this whole new system, it's hard for me to resell tickets for individual games because I got to upload a PDF and then I have to do this and I have to do that. What is the balance between trying to control the market so it doesn't get overrun by the bad guys, let's say, but then still protecting regular season ticket holders but not make it so cumbersome for them to offload tickets for individual games?
Yeah, well, I think the evolution of our secondary market strategy, you go back 5, 10, 15 years, it's the scalpers, as they were called on the streets, were considered, there's a negative connotation. That's completely flipped on its head where now secondary market is sort of an asset. I mean, if you're a season ticket holder for a baseball team, we need to provide you a safe, convenient, easy way to resell your tickets. That's sort of an obligation, and our season ticket holders expect that. So we're now thinking of the best way that we can do that, provide them with a system that works conveniently and efficiently, and we're looking at, StubHub is a major partner in Major League Baseball and of the Red Sox, but we're also exploring different partnerships with other companies like Eventellect and others. We're just looking for ways to allow our season ticket holders to resell those tickets, because the reality is nobody goes to 81 games anymore, and they need to be able to do that.
You mentioned to me earlier, and maybe this would be good for the audience, when you first started out at the Red Sox, maybe 15 years ago almost, talk about how you guys did dynamic ticket pricing back then.
Well, it's a little bit embarrassing. It is coming up on my 16th year, and I remember in 2003 or 2004 when I started, sitting in a conference room with Larry Lucchino, our president and CEO, Sam Kennedy, our COO, Ron Baumgartner, our head of ticketing, and we just had a spreadsheet up, and we would say, field box, let's take that up $5. Grandstand, let's try $2. It was an hour meeting. There was no data. It was all gut feel. And that has evolved. So then we had the StubHub partnership where we got access to that data. That was incredibly rich information that showed when tickets were sold for what games at what price for what location. Then we turned on variable pricing in 2013. We now do dynamic pricing on the Green Monster. So that evolution of how the pricing has become so much more sophisticated, and the use of data behind the scenes has been a lot of fun for me professionally. It's been a lot of fun to work on. And I think the fans ultimately end up with a more balanced, market sort of based price And I think the 2003, 2004 model, it worked okay, but it was incredibly unsophisticated.
And then Kurt, I want to turn to you because we hear a lot about market-based pricing as it all relates to data-driven analytics, everything about the conference, but mobile tickets, and everyone keeps saying, oh, it's eventually going to turn into the airline industry. There's no real price. It's just whatever they happen to charge you for that particular game, that particular day. And then there's this debate about, well, is it really like an airline? Is it not? That's a different type of good, but the pricing looks similar. You work with a lot of different NBA and NHL teams. What is the thought process from one team to another about how they try to do dynamic?
So that question's loaded with a lot of
Oh yeah, I just
stuff.
dumped it
So
all in there to see what you might respond to.
I'll start with mobile because I think to Tim's point, it kind of starts with the data. And as this year, we have 17 NBA and NHL teams that went fully mobile. When I say fully mobile, meaning just no PDF. They might still have hard tickets for their season seat holders, or they might still have season seat holder cards that they swipe in or have a QR code type of scan. And as you start seeing teams get more sophisticated on their data and understanding more about the ticket itself, and mobile helps them do that. It gives them a ton of insight. Last year, 16-17 season, on the NBA and NHL, we had one company, two teams. Monumental Sports was really the only team that fully went away from the PDF in 16-17. And their data and the number of new names to file, the insights they got, the money that they derived from being mobile, parlayed into a very good season for them on a lot of fronts on the business side. Better insights on their consumers, season seat holders being able to post and sell more, which in theory helps renewals because the season seat base is still a very critical component of that business. And then you start packing in better insights of pricing on top of that. Whether a team is in a broker consolidation position, where they're getting extra data from a Patrick or a Dynasty or whoever, they will start taking that intel and pricing better, both single game and seasons eventually. And I think what you're seeing is most teams absolutely dynamic price on the primary side all the time. They use a product. We have a product called Price Master. There's a various bunch of different systems out there that will help them price their primary. Most teams are very comfortable going up. Not as many are as comfortable going down, but I think all teams are doing it in some way, shape, or form. Some better than others, but I think they're all pretty much there. Where I think the next layer really becomes more important on the pricing side is on the season seat side. And as you dynamically price your season seats as it goes up and down across a Friday game against a hot team versus a Tuesday night, I'm not going to throw out any team names, against a not so hot team, as the season seat holder thinks the value of that ticket is $170 across the board, is very different than if the Tuesday game is priced on the season seat level at 80, and then that Friday night game is priced at 170. So, I think you'll start seeing as the data comes in, they get much more savvy on their pricing across the board. And I think mobile is really the pathway to that. We have a bunch of teams in here that can, afterwards talk about the mobile experience for them. OKC, I saw KC in here from the US Open. We have the Sharks, I think I saw in here as well. So there's 9 NHL teams and 8 NBA teams that went fully mobile this year, and their business results are staggering. And it was very consistent with Monumental saw last year. So I think that's the path to what's going on across all systems, all platforms, not just Ticketmaster. And I think you'll start seeing a very fast-paced pricing system change.
Is that where a company like Russ and Core comes into play because it's starting to get so complicated for teams that they need to say, we need extra software to figure this out. We can't do this on a spreadsheet in a room and raise this by $5. It's become so complex that they have to hire you guys, pay more even to just figure it all out, right?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, what this is all doing, and regardless of your combination of tactics, it's about generating more data, identifying more fans that you may have traditionally been unable to identify. Like you take something like working with Pat or some of the secondary market tactics. Ultimately, the goal isn't just to move more inventory. Hopefully the biggest result is I've identified more buyers and I've brought them into my ecosystem. So I'm bringing in the primary buyers, I'm bringing in the secondary buyers, I'm bringing in the mobile behavior, I'm bringing in the forwarding and the printing, if printing's still turned on, although most people aren't doing that for good reason now. Maybe I need to be able to tie that back to the food and beverage. Maybe I want to tie that back into my digital marketing. There was a presentation earlier that showed about how important the tracking of email and web behavior is for retention as a predictor of how likely someone might be to renew their season tickets. So the more you take on these tactics that are ticket pricing and ticket sales centric, you're getting this big influx of data. It's going to drive pricing, it's going to drive segmentation, and so you need to put it somewhere, you need to make sure it's clean, that we don't have semi-synonymous versions of the same person because they happen to buy on 2 or 3 different systems. We need them to tie back into a single identity so that way we can market to them properly, that we can price our tickets properly, and that's where different software elements will come in to kind of make that possible.
There's got to be some limits to dynamic pricing because at some point you don't want to upset your customers where tickets get way too expensive. On the other hand, you don't want them to go so low where tickets are $1 because then you just discourage people from getting season tickets. And this question is for anybody, but there's got to be some way where you can't let the data completely dictate what you're doing just because there's some common sense behind that.
Yeah, well, one of the things that President Obama said that I thought resonated the most.
You can't talk about anything that he said.
Oh, and here I can, right?
As long as no one tweets it.
Is that the data is a tool to help you make the decision, but it shouldn't drive your decisions. And I think that one thing that we try to do is balance the data with executive instincts, PR, other factors, so that, to your point, we could probably charge $2,000 for a Green Monster seat for opening day. But when we ask ourselves in a room, do we really want to have a $2,000 Green Monster seat out there? The answer is probably no. And going back to your question about the airline industry, I actually flew up from Orlando this morning. I paid $350 for my one-way flight, and it was, I bought it a week ago. But I didn't care. The person next to me, if he paid $100 or $50, it didn't bother me at all. I didn't care. In the airlines, I don't think you care. I still think in a sporting venue, at least I'll speak for the Red Sox, we feel like there's a little, that's not quite there yet. If a field box seat holder is sitting next to someone who might have paid, he might have paid 100 and the guy next to him paid 25 because that's what the market said, we worry about that dynamic. So I think to your point, you use the data, dynamic pricing absolutely helps you maximize revenue, but there's limits to how high and how low you can go, and I think you have to balance the data with those sort of other factors.
I know teams are trying to maximize revenue. That's why they'll do a deal with Eventellect. They'll have core software there. They'll work with Ticketmaster to figure it out. But how does this help the fan? Like, we know that teams can make more money if they're optimal and efficient with these ticket prices, but how does this help the fan fundamentally?
I think that teams still need to be very focused on the season ticket holder. And I think that generally speaking, teams are saying, look, season tickets, mini plans, those are still the best way to access our product. And I think that that's where complementary marketing comes in to make sure that the secondary market reflects what the team is sort of telling their season ticket holder. And I think that's what Kurt was talking about, how teams are getting more sophisticated about setting expectations around when a fan might sell a low demand game versus a high demand game so that they understand there's still a lot of value in the package. And that's really where we're very focused is consulting with teams about how we can restore value for the season ticket holder. I think it's also very important that teams remain very creative about promotional nights. And I think that that's somewhere we've seen tremendous progress on the primary market is teams finding new and creative ways to reach fans they might not otherwise have reached. And I think that that's why some of the most successful teams are using the right sort of analytics tools to score customers and service customers. So it's not just about getting more money, it's about providing the right experience to the right person. And I know the 76ers, who are one of the smartest teams in sports, they score their secondary market leads. So if someone bought a really expensive ticket for when the Cavs come in, that person might not get the same level of attention as someone who bought a face value ticket for a lower demand game, because that fan coming to the lower demand game might actually be more of a 76ers fan. And I think that that's where we're going to see a lot of progress is teams better servicing based on the data they're getting from the secondary and other sources.
Yeah, and the ticket is the entry point, right? So you just mentioned some people, everyone wants to raise it, some people are a little resistant, but there are opportunities to lower the price or reshift the combination of amenities based on where you're seeing certain types of inventory moving. And the whole premise of doing that is to create a better fan experience for different elements of your fan base. It ties back to personalization. There are different audiences that are expecting different things out of attending a live event. And so, like I said, the ticket might be one piece of it, but I know it's a ticketing panel, but how does that affect your F&B pricing? We've seen what the response was like in Atlanta when they decided to, yeah, they still raised ticket prices and they want to maximize ticketing revenue, but for them strategically, they were able to offset that with some of the things they did on their F&B pricing. And all these different tactics come down to making sure whatever you pay, at the end of the day when you leave the building, you felt like you had the right experience regardless of what you paid for it, and now I can incentivize you to come back.
Yeah, personalization is number one, and I think number two for a lot of us who have been on the team or arena side is fraud. As you start owning the ecosystem and you can start pulling back the antiquated ticket that can just be handed off on the corner, you start eliminating fraud. And the teams that have moved to mobile, I can promise you, if you ask any of them, has it reduced fraud? And the answer is overwhelmingly yes. To the point where if you asked Orlando City or Oklahoma City, many of the teams, the Celtics, they'll tell you that fraud has gone down. And, you know, for someone who's been in a box office where a family spent $2,000 to buy a Taylor Swift ticket or whatever the show was that was fake, and you literally don't have a seat in the arena to put them in, they're out probably $2,000 that they could use. It's heart-wrenching, and I think as arenas and teams, and content providers, you know, Ticketmaster is owned by Live Nation, it's up to us to make sure that fans who buy a ticket can do so in a verified fashion, that it's authentic, that they come to the door, they actually get into the seat they bought, regardless of where they bought it. And the mobile environment absolutely starts condensing that fraud problem significantly, but that and personalization for sure.
Just to piggyback on that, the personalization and sort of serving the fans the right message at the right time, and sort of, you know, whatever algorithms the advertisers use on my Instagram feed to serve me ads, they're really good because I find myself seeing
But
these
isn't
ads.
it creepy at some point?
I
It's a little
don't
too good?
personally find it creepy. I sort of say, hey, they got me on that one. That's, you know, I just bought that new wallet or those new shoes. But in general, I think that consumers are expecting that level of personalization, and I think the data helps teams serve those offers up to different people that have different, preferences. The other thing that I think teams do is they're challenged because the market is so competitive. You know, you've got secondary clubs out there trying to sell tickets. We're trying to sell tickets. It forces us to be more creative with our packaging, with our tickets. You know, baseball teams has these monthly subscription passes, and there's these new products that are coming out that are good for fans, millennials, and others that I think probably wouldn't be being rolled out so quickly without this sort of environment that forces teams to be creative, and I think that's another benefit.
How important is it to know exactly who is in every seat at the game? Because we go back 20 years ago, you had no idea, right? Anyone who just had paper tickets, it was whatever. And now the goal from talking to everybody is we want to know every single person in every seat. It sounds like we're not there 100%, but we're getting pretty close within a couple of years. What happens once we get to that point? What changes? Is it just more targeted marketing, calling up people to sign up for a bigger package? What goes on from there?
It's not to beat a drum, but it is still about personalization, because the more I can know about everyone in the building, you know, you might not have been the buyer, but you're the attendee, and so to me, you're still my customer. I still need to be able to deliver an experience to you, and the more I know about you, the more I have an ability to deliver an experience to you. And that experience, some of that experience isn't in the venue. The ticket is the way you attended a game, but for me to identify you means now I'm on one, yes, there's an opportunity to monetize. I can be able to message around merchandise or coming back to other games, but just developing some type of relationship with you so you feel closer to the team, you're more likely to attend games in the future. The tactics that we have available to us now, you know, most of them are predicated on some element of being able to identify those people. 20 years ago, you know, there's a lot of things we didn't do 20 years ago, and it didn't matter because you went on sale, your season ticket holders were 80%, the rest of it sold on its own, and all prices were fixed, and you know, you didn't worry about it. But the share of wallet everything's more competitive to get share of wallet. There's so many alternatives to go get Netflix and Amazon and all these other consumption patterns in OTT that you need to be able to have that direct conversation to drive that sales channel.
That was going to be my next question. What's the competition? Is it, for the Red Sox, for example, is it the competition is getting people to come in, or they might just watch it on TV? Or is it if they don't come to the game, they're just out doing something else altogether? Who are you actually competing with?
I mean, it's all the above. You know, we talk about share of wallet, but we also talk about share of mind, share of time. And so we're competing with anything that people choose to do in their leisure time, whether that's going to the beach, whether that's watching something on TV, whether that's going to a Celtics game. So we view any of that as competition. And I think our job is to try to make our product, our Fenway experience, as good as it possibly can be, make the pricing sort of align with demand, so you want the pricing to align with supply and demand, and just over-deliver on service and quality of experience and hope that person has a great experience, goes home, tells 5 friends they had a great experience, and then brings more people. But we're competing with everything that people choose to do. And in this day and age, there's so many entertainment options that, you know, you're not just competing with the Celtics, Bruins, and Patriots, you're competing with anything people do with their time, in my opinion.
And I think the one thing they've left out is security. You know, the fan identity. I'm pretty sure that every single person that was in that last session was fully checked, right, to make sure the security coming in, making sure that that was a safe environment for all of us who were at the conference, translates to the arena business and the stadium business. For all of us who are putting a lot of people through doors, it's incumbent on us to make sure that everybody's there to enjoy the live game safely. And fan identity plays right into that. Not to overhype that, but if you don't think that lots of meetings are happening in arenas and theaters and stadiums around the country about how do we make our security better across the board, you're not reading the news at all. So as you move into a mobile ticket environment and ultimately into maybe even a more secure ticketing environment with no barcodes or facial recognition or whatever the next pathway is for that, it's real and it's coming. I think as you've seen teams adopt mobile and know a lot more about their fan who's coming through the door, that other part of the business is just right behind it. They're hiring much more sophisticated security chiefs of staff across. I mean, I've heard, teams, NBA, NHL, hiring former FBI directors, and it's real, and it's something we all have to deal with in that business for sure. So, but that comes with knowing who's in your building, every single one of them.
I think that in terms of the competition, Feld Entertainment, which runs Disney on Ice and a few other family properties, they're really smart at understanding their competition, and they'll even say the local free parade is competition for their product, so they're always very sensitive about growing their audience, not just about maximizing yield. And in terms of how mobile is going to transform things, WWE is another expert marketer. And when they do WWE Raw on a Monday night, they generally launch the next time it's coming back to the venue, like after that performance. And so they have flyers currently in a lot of these buildings saying, hey, hope you enjoyed Raw. It's coming back in 6 months, or SmackDown might be coming back. Well, now with mobile, what's going to happen is with the Ticketmaster interface is being able to say, hey, you sat in this seat. Would you like to buy it for the next event in 6 months? And I think that that's going to be one way that, property content rights holders, continually generate, use of their product. Because one of the big threats to all of our businesses is Netflix. If they don't buy early and you don't get them committed early, it doesn't matter if it's $5 or $25, they might just not go. And so mobile being able to hit people with immediacy of, hey, we just advanced to the next round of the playoffs, here's your option, that's really going to help the live ecosystem stay as robust as it is.
How much data is involved in, let's say you guys at Fenway Park, there's a football game that you guys are hosting, one-time events, or in an NBA or NHL arena, there's a Taylor Swift concert that's happening there. The other activities happening in that stadium, can you use that analytics to get people to come to a Red Sox game? Because maybe they came to Fenway for some other event, or they came to Madison Square Garden for a concert, but not necessarily a Knicks game. That kind of question. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, our customer data warehouse has anybody that's ever touched us in, whether they bought a ticket to our big air ski jumping event or whether they bought a Red Sox game or a concert, everybody goes into the customer data warehouse. So every piece of data we can get our hands on, we're absolutely trying to gather, organize, dedupe, cleanse, put in a system. The hard part is how do you then take that information and make actionable, things that help you sell more tickets later. And a lot of times there's not much crossover. The demographics of the ski jumping and snowboarding event or the Irish hurling event that we hosted, there was not a lot of crossover for Red Sox games. But that's okay, because those things might have crossed over in other places. It's our data team's job to sort of understand where that crossover lies, pull those insights out and try to apply them. They don't always apply, but we're absolutely collecting every single piece of thing that we're, and not just on those, food and beverage data, other data. We're a ways off from really using that, but we're trying to get our arms around that stuff as well.
This is an area, Ticketmaster, Live Analytics.
I'll just say Live Analytics.
Yeah, Live Analytics is phenomenal at this in terms of letting you have that visibility into all these different propensities across sports, across music and entertainment, and based on all the data that they've been able to collect. And I'll say personalization again, because if you know there's no opportunity to cross-sell this person, if they are not likely to buy that other event, traditionally, if you didn't know that, you would have tried anyway, because why not?
Like you would just be spamming them.
It was
let's
blast
say.
marketing, right.
Yeah.
So now you can avoid that negative blast marketing. Every person you email or you call has a potential future value until you give them too many wrong messages, and now you lose the ability to have any conversation with them. They opt out, they say do not call, whatever it might be. So it's really important to not engage them if it's clear. Pardon me, if it's clear that the opportunity really isn't there. Let's save it for something that is more value, and that Live A data is really good for leveraging that.
And we, on the live analytics side of the business, we work really closely with booking directors at arenas to actually make good booking decisions. So based on whatever database they have, if you're the SAP center and you are considering to go out of pocket to book a certain show that's a new hot upcoming tour, but you're not 100% that you have the database to support that kind of tour, whoever it is, if it's pop or R&B, whatever. And it's not a slam dunk tour like a Bruno Mars or a Taylor Swift, and there's some risk there. They can actually tap into the live analytics database and say, of my database, do these customers like this? And it helps the sophistication on the booking side as much as it does on the team side. And that's a tool that arenas have been using for years now to make better booking decisions, to make decisions on if they want to go out of pocket and actually co-promote a show with the local Live Nation promoter or whoever it might be. And those insights can be the difference between bringing in a winner and bringing in a loser for your company. So that's where people are really getting sophisticated on that side.
Pat, I want to ask you a question from the Eventellect side. In the example of the Dodgers case, let's say, instead of them going to dozens of brokers who would have depressed prices, you guys are able to look at it just as a whole, as one company, and figure out what's the right price for each game rather than all these brokers depressing the price. Where is there more variability in terms of these single game prices or a season ticket? Because once you lock in the wrong season ticket price, you can really upset people that I know in New York that say, I don't want to be a Rangers season ticket holder anymore because it's just cheaper to buy individual games when they're bad. I know that also comes to hockey arenas as well, but how do you try to find that right price that doesn't upset the bigger fans who actually spent more money and now they're seeing tickets for cheaper?
So I think it begins with product segmentation on the very front end, and we're seeing more teams spend more time of focusing their sales force on certain parts of the building. And we're consulting with our partner teams about what areas should you be most focused on selling versus what areas should we be most focused on selling. So right there, getting some segmentation helps. The next part is understanding sales data as exists in your current ecosystem. Sometimes teams feel pressure to price down because there's been unnatural results on the secondary market, because there have been 40 brokers just undercutting one another trying to liquidate. But on the flip side, we've seen times where teams have said, the average upper deck ticket for this game was $75. I'm gonna be safe if I go to market at $65. But it's like, well, maybe that $75 happened because there were some outlying sales at $150. So we really have to look at the data and kind of throw out the outliers and also see what makes sense for the overall, ecosystem of the building, also what support staff the team has. But generally speaking, you want to be able to create a market by having some controls without other people, compromising your pricing strategy.
Is there value for just having seats filled? Because when you have in arena sponsors that are just targeting the people there, and you've got the TV audience that sees empty arenas, empty fields, it doesn't look good. How much value is there to just subsidize tickets or drop them a little bit just to get those seats filled so that it just looks better from a branding point of view?
Well, I think there's a ton of value, what you described with just the visual, but more importantly, for two other reasons. I think our players, the players that thrive in Boston are players that have enjoyed the fact that we're fortunate enough to have full crowds most of the time, and I think that environment creates a competitive advantage. And I think obviously there's the food and beverage per cap component of that, but more importantly, like I said earlier, we don't want a seat to be empty because that's a lost opportunity to have a positive impact on someone.
But it may not be worth it to sell it to them for $3, right?
Correct,
That's
and
the
there's
tricky
certainly
part.
a floor, but I think there is certainly a value to having someone come to Fenway, have a great experience, and want to come back later. The tipping point of trying to determine what is too low, and we talked about this a little bit. We talk about market clearing price, which is what price would you have to charge to sell out an entire game, and in some cases, in some markets, that price might be negative, meaning you have to pay people to come and fill it.
Right.
And so you could just offer 10 cents a dollar, it doesn't even matter. So there is a sort of way that you have to think about, well, I can't, that's where the data and the balance of data and gut instinct come in and sort of balancing those things.
We call it strategic spoilage. So if we're
Strategic spoilage, that's a good phrase.
if we're able to have a good percentage of the inventory, we can also dress the building appropriately. There's going to be games that we know are bad. Let's at least fill the seats according to making it look logical. Or, and I think the future of this, and I think this were some of the...
What's an example of that? What do you mean
Well,
by
so
that?
for example, I think that concentrate the attendance so you can create atmosphere around home plate. If it's a lower demand game, having someone sitting in the outfield in the upper deck, yes, that's a butt in the seat, but also what if you got them closer and they were able to actually add to the atmosphere? And I think that's the next level of where we're trying to partner with our teams and make sure that we're dressing the buildings appropriately.
Because you do see that in a lot of arenas where it's just all the expensive seats are empty, or whatever, maybe they're season ticket holders, they've got a big budget, it doesn't matter if they miss a game, and then all the seats above that don't show up on television, they're all filled up, but that TV visual looks a lot worse, and you think, why can't those guys just take those seats if somebody hasn't come by the second quarter, the third inning, or whatever it is?
I mean, that gets exacerbated by the fact that those seats often are tied to the best clubs and the amenities and all these other things, and so those people might be in the building and having an amazing experience and getting what they want out of their purchase, and they come and go into those seats. So it's extra problematic when you have all of those extra amenities and having to try to account for the visual. But even back to the trying to get bodies in the seats, a lot of it comes down to the short-term, long-term strategy. I've seen teams go too far in terms of needing to paper the house or do whatever they can to fill the building, and all that does is also has this effect of training the market that there's a better offer coming, there's a discount coming. I know a guy who knows a guy,
Never pay full price because they can't even sell it.
and there's a potential long-term damage. So there's a fun parallel you see this with GMs, on the team side, right? The question is he a GM? Is he playing for his job? Is he making short-term decisions because he thinks he's going to get fired? Or is he investing in the draft or having these long-term strategies because he's got the trust of management? I think there's a parallel that has to be on the sales and marketing side in terms of, yes, we might be more willing to not discount and take, come short of a particular goal for this game or this season because we can forecast if we do this, what impact might it have on next season or the season after. Your pricing strategy should not be on a year-by-year basis. It has to have a bit of a 3 to 5 year horizon on the next impact that it's going to have.
But this is where teams have become, in my opinion, very sophisticated. The days of, there's still teams out there that grab a stack of tickets and go, we got to fill the house. But most teams now are using different tools to segment proper people to get in those seats. Example, Student Rush. That's probably the best example just because you can target Student Rush nights in a very sophisticated way, make sure they tie into an EDU address, make sure they show up with an ID, do it through mobile, do it through your team app, through Experience or whatever source you're going to use to implement that offer. And that's a really strategic way to get the right people in your building, know who they are, start talking to them the way they want to be, marketed to, bring them into your app, into your team atmosphere, and as a team can kind of start manipulating that so it's within their app, within their experience, very targeted. You don't really see those offers hitting the marketplace in a blast way where the season seat holder didn't decide to go to the game that night and they're watching their local RSN broadcast, and the cheap package comes on the TV and they're like, that's going to be sitting right next to me. And that's where I think the sophistication of personalization and the discounting that goes along with that has gotten so much better, in my humble opinion, that it's not in your face to the season seat holder as much as it used to be. And that's the secret, I think, a little bit.
How much, just for the audience, because I know we hear so much about media rights deals, and just the trend is, it's not about going to the games anymore. It's every money, all the dollars are coming from TV deals. But just to give a sense of what percentage are we still talking about in-game ticket revenue, whether it's the Red Sox or an average NBA team or the Dodgers, like what percentage of income is still tickets?
I would say, in my experience and what we've seen, it's somewhere around half, maybe a little less than half. It's still the golden goose. I mean, the ticket revenue is still the largest sort of revenue source, I think, for most clubs. Certainly, I'd say in baseball, and that's why it's sort of important we focus on these types of things. So it's a significant part of our business that we spend a lot of time thinking about how to maximize.
Ticketing is, even if you're getting a big broadcast check, I promise you within every team organization, the focus is on winning and tickets. And that's the talk every single day, is how do we get more people in here? How do we build our season seat base? And it's funny, Ticketmaster, yeah, we're in the single game ticketing business, but we've spent a lot of money on our season seat portals account manager. For those of you who know what that is, it's the portal, the system in which season seat holders come to every day through a team's experience, through their branded experience to ticket manage, right? To say, I'm going to send these to my neighbor, I'm going to send these to my business partner. And our investment in the infrastructure of season seat portals and SDKs that are embedded within the team apps, so that season seat holders specifically can go in and manage their tickets in a quick and efficient way, post them for resale, forward them to somebody. That is a business that if we didn't keep investing in that, we would lose clients left and right. Even though the majority of our business is in the primary space, we have to make sure we're working with our partners to keep that season seat base, because it is the baseline of success in any organization. And as the system feeds on itself and you can retain those season seat holders, any team person in here will tell you, because I know it was something I dealt with every day when I was on the team side, is it all starts with your renewal of your base. And your entire season kicks off, not wins or losses, it's about your renewal. And you have to make sure that the elements you're giving your season seat holders are all playing into that renewal at the end of the day. The wins and losses matter as well, but you have to make it easy for them to transact and to move tickets to people they want to move tickets to.
How much are we going to see teams starting to partner up to get a piece of that secondary market action, so that if there are certain games, those prices get higher as people resell and they want a piece of it, rather than in the past, like you said, scalpers was a bad word, but now you are starting to see teams say, I want a little bit of that action too.
I mean, I'll speak for us. When we think about our secondary market strategy, and we don't have currently any of these types of partnerships, although we have explored them, it's less about a piece of the action and it's more about help distributing tickets. And I think about, there's retailers out there that have their own online store, retailerx.com. But they still list their products on Amazon, because Amazon has this massive, massive distribution channel with a ton of people shopping on it. And so we would rather someone buy tickets at redsox.com, but if they're going to go to StubHub.com or other places, and again, that helps our season ticket holders because they're reselling it and they're happy about that. We realize that that's sort of a you can't beat them, join them type of thing. So I do think that as a distribution partner, you could see teams start to work with these companies to help distribute tickets.
Every team's different. They all have different strategies, but ultimately, whether they're working through Patrick and they're using him as the distribution system, or they want to be their own distribution system, there's a lot of different ways to handle that. The world of distribution has been around for years and years and years. Teams participating in the secondary market has been around for years and years and years at this point. And there's just different ways to do it, different philosophies on how you do it, but the most important philosophy is making sure that, A, you're participating in it, obviously, but that you know who those fans are. That's why a lot of teams have gone mobile, because if a ticket transacts on StubHub and not Ticketmaster, it does it on mobile, you now know who that customer is. And as you work closer with the Patricks of the world, you get more insights of what they paid and where they bought it. And it's a partnership, and that is all one ecosystem for the teams now. That's here to stay.
I think that with Ted Leonsis and Michael Rubin kicked off the day talking about alignment with the content. I just think that whether it's the T-shirt or the TV rights or the ticket, you want to have real, true, long-term alignment because it just makes the entire business flow better. So I do think that it's just a matter of where the teams are in their evolution of where they want to be in the participation, in the food chain. Because with Ticketmaster Resale and StubHub, they can participate in those fees, and then the management of the tickets, they can participate in that risk and upside. So it's really about how they view their balance sheets and how they view their overall business. So those teams that want to be aligned completely, those teams are going to accelerate their business to match those needs.
But is there a right or wrong answer at this point? Because there's enough data from all these different teams and all these different approaches. Like some people have certain partners, others are doing it a different way. At some point, there's got to be, this is the right answer and everyone should do it this way.
I don't think there is one right answer. I think this is an area where there is a lot of variance depending on your marketplace, the amount of inventory, the number of teams in the market, your team's success, the building, so just basic supply and demand that, teams can be very effective with different modes. It's more about probably the tactics that you execute. If I'm going to have 20 different brokers that we are working with to manage inventory, that could be beneficial, and maybe you still negotiate some data sharing, and maybe that's an easier model for you to operate in versus consolidation. There's different. You can have success with both models. You can also fail with both models if you're not executing properly.
What are the bigger kind of controversies right now in the ticketing world? Because right now you guys are all from different ecosystems, so it's not like you're competing against each other in any particular area, but is there something that for the audience, like the stuff behind the scenes that there's still big disagreements on, that there are fights about, that you guys are still struggling to get through with various partners? Everyone's silent.
That's directed at me.
It's directed at everybody. No, it wasn't directed.
So I think the panel is a good sense of the ecosystem that we all have a different part in it.
Right.
I think that, mobile is obviously very critical to teams getting to better know their fans. And I think that there's certainly some disagreement about who owns that customer data. And I think that there's some confusion, around that. And some marketplaces want to keep it all to themselves, and other teams don't want the data because they can't use it. So I think that that's one of the areas of discrepancy and where the data comes in. Our firm is completely aligned with the fact that we want the teams to be the best marketers possible because they can do the most for their fan once they're in the building. And we want fans to have a good experience in the building so that they come back regardless of where they buy. Because the more people that come to games, the more valuable all the inventory is. So I think that that's really critical, is that making sure that the teams get the data the way they want it and that everybody's aligned with that fact.
And I was going to ask, because there are a lot of people here looking for jobs in the sports industry. From each of your perspectives, is it more important to have a data person or a sports person to get involved in something like this?
I mean, I would say when I look to hire someone on my team, there's a lot of people out there that are really intelligent, really bright, that can do the data side. But being able to sort of understand strategically what the data means and being able to sort of understand the insights from it, that's the thing that I think is harder. And it's a skill that's hard to teach. It's almost, so I think when we look for hires, we look for people that understand the higher level strategic insight of why they're doing the work they're doing and what it means long term. And so that's what we look for when we hire, and I think I would encourage people to think bigger picture, not just focus on the exact tools of that you might use, but more the bigger, broader picture.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that having that mind that can wrap up the data in a meaningful way, and understand that it's how you present it and how you go to whoever it is you're working for to say, here's the data, here's my opinion, here's how I think it can help us as an organization. And thinking outside of just ticketing, like where everything is going is you have all these different pieces of data coming into a central warehouse, and how do you wrap that all together in a meaningful way to help people make better decisions on a daily basis? And if you can frame that up and have a really thoughtful way of presenting that, I think you'll have success in this business.
We almost, especially where being on the service provider side and working with different teams, it's definitely communication. It's almost like a teaching element, because you might have the right answer, you might have built the best dashboard, or the technology is working the right way, but in order to build the trust, you need to be able to explain enough of how you got there, and the communication and the education piece is really what we look for.
And for us, it's about how can we help our partner teams more. And I think one of the areas we're getting the most lift within the company is within software. And so I think that that's a very valuable skill, is learning how to code and how to communicate data. But we're absolutely looking for software developers who want to help over 70 professional sports teams get better. So please give me your resume.
Yeah, software developers,
Just put a bullseye
stand
on
up,
you right
meet Patrick over there in that corner.
That's probably a great place to end it. And everyone who wants a job, talk to Patrick at the end of this. Thanks to our audience for
Thanks,
coming
everybody.
and joining us, and thanks to our panelists for
Thanks, Eric.
participating today.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you all. Nice job, Russ.
Likewise.
See you, buddy.
Thanks. Yeah, that's good.
Good job.